Praise Yah. Praise Yah. I'm going to give Lamar's just a quick second here. So again, shalom to all of our Zoom room. Can we give the Zoom room another shalom, y'all? Shalom. So included in the Zoom room, there's a lot of people in here, y'all. But Rabbi and Rabbits are in here. So yeah, praise the Most High. Let me know when you're ready for it. Oh, you know what? I don't have it up here, but they can't really see it. I'm just waiting for a quick second, y'all. We're going to get rocking and rolling. All right, praise the Most High. So, I have a simple question. Very simple question. Is obedience bondage? No. So the answer to that is, oh, I see some faces. I see some yes. I see some no. I see some things that make you go, huh? So without more context, right? I can't quite answer that question. But there's something that we have been told and taught, and there's doctrine that we have been given, really untruths that we have been told, that when we obey the law, we are in bondage. Obeying the law puts us in bondage. And so that's really the place from which my question comes. Is obedience. Now the question is what? To what? That should be the response, right? The response should be obedience to what? And so I will tell you the to what part. Obedience to the law. Is obedience to the law bondage? So we're going to go into a little bit of what took place with the Exodus and them leaving. And that is really our greatest example of freedom. I mean, is there any greater example that we have in the scripture than a people being set free, literally? A people literally being set free. And so, let's get started with this understanding. Let's start with Deuteronomy chapter 6. We're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16. Verse 16 through 25. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16 through 25. There's some things in there that we're gonna look at. Let's see. All right, so let's first look here, and then we're gonna move from there and kind of see what we can figure out about disobedience being bondage. All right, so it says, do not try Yahweh your Elohim as you tried him in Massah. Diligently guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim and his witnesses and his laws which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the eyes of Yahweh, that it might be well with you. And you shall go in and possess the good land of which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to drive out all your enemies from before you, as Yahweh has spoken. Verse 20. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is the meaning of the witnesses and the laws and the right rulings which Yahweh our Elohim has commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Mitzrayim, or Egypt. And Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, with a strong hand. And Yahweh sent signs and wonders, great and grievous, upon Mitzrayim, upon Pharaoh, and upon all his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from there. Does that seem like a freedom type of act? He brought us out from there to bring us in, to give us the land of which he swore to our fathers. And Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws, to fear Yahweh our Elohim, for our good always, to keep us alive, as it is today. And it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all this command before Yahweh our Elohim, as he has commanded us. Hallelujah. And so, when we first begin, we look at how did they actually try Yahweh. That's the first verse we see in 16. So the question is, how did they actually try Yahweh? So let's go back and let's take a look and let's establish how they tried him. Because that's the first thing he said. Don't try me. Don't try me. And he says that we already did it, right? We tried him where? In Massa. So let's go back to Exodus. We're going to start with Exodus chapter 17. And real quickly, just again, we're trying to get an idea for how did we try Yahweh at Massa? What was his reason for saying that? And so, Exodus chapter 17, verse 2 and 3 says, that's verse 1. Verse 2. Therefore the people strove with Moshe and said, give us water to drink. And Moshe said to them, why do you strive with me? Why do you try Yahweh? There it is. And the people thirsted there for water. And the people grumbled against Moshe and said, why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? This is when they were in Massa. Now, if you go to verse 7, it says, and he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah, because of the strife of the children of Israel, and because they tried Yahweh. So this is the place where they tried him, right? Let's go back to verse chapter 16. Chapter 16, let's look at verse 7 and 8. Let's look at verse 7 and 8. Because they was rumbling against quote-unquote Moshe, right? Hint, hint. What do we typically hear the law or the Torah referred to as? The law of Moses. Sounds like still some grumbling against Moses. Let's take it to chapter 16, verse 7 and 8. And it reads, and in the morning you shall see the esteem of Yahweh, for he hears your grumblings against who? Yahweh. Against Yahweh. Who the grumblings against? And then it says, and what are we that you grumble against us? Now, who's saying what are we that you grumble against us? That's Moshe. Moshe is saying, your grumblings, hey, it's not against me.
That's right.
It's not against Aaron. It's against the Most High Yah. That's who your grumblings are against. Now let's look at verse 8, and it says, and Moshe said, in that Yahweh gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfaction, for Yahweh hears your grumblings, which you make against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against Yahweh. The grumblings are not against us, but they're against Yahweh. So this we see is the first thing that he addresses in back in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16. Don't try Yahweh as you did in Massacre. And the way you tried him is you were grumbling against who you thought was us. But your grumblings are against him. All that complaining you're doing is against him. And so in 17 he then says, diligently guard. If we look at that word, those two words in Hebrew, it's the same word twice. Shamar, shamar. Shamar, shamar. Diligently. So when you see that in Hebrew, when something is said 2 times, it's like putting an exponent to it. Yep. It's an exponential growth saying, no. It's not enough for you to guard. You need to guard. You need to guard. You do your best guarding. And what do we guarding? What's verse 17 say? And we're back in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 17. What does it tell us to guard? The commands of who? Yahweh. Of Yahweh your Elohim. It doesn't say the commands of Moshe. It says guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim. That's what we are called to do. And what is it? What's the problem? The problem comes in when we want to do what is good in our eyes, but what are we supposed to be doing? 18 says, and you shall do what is right and good in the eyes of who? We can't trust our own eyes. We can't trust our own feelings. We can't trust our own thoughts. We can't trust ourselves. We have to know and understand and recognize that we fall short. Our righteousness is what? Filthy rags. Filthy rags. That's our righteousness. So the attention is being put back where it's supposed to be, right? And he's saying here, you shall do what is right and good in his eyes, not in your own eyes. Which means you got to know what he considers right and good. We have to be able to recognize it. Not from ourselves, but from him. From him. From him. So then we keep traveling down this verse, and he says that your kids, your children, are going to ask you questions like, well, why are you doing this stuff? What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of these laws and the witnesses and the right rulings? Why are you doing this stuff? And the answer is what? We were slaves. Let's just stop right there. He said, in this verse 21, it says, then you shall say to your son, you don't understand. We were slaves. And the reason that you can say were, come on my English people, because it's what? It's past tense. We were slaves. So if you were slaves, Yahweh gave you all these commands and said that you are to guard them, and they did what for you?
They freed you.
They freed you. Guarding those commands freed you. When the question came up, why do you guard these commands? The first part of the response is, because I used to be a slave. So then, I can pause right there and say, that would mean obedience to these commands does not put me in bondage.
Right.
Obedience to these commands is precisely what makes me free.
Hallelujah.
It is exactly what makes me free. And he began to talk about the works of the Most High, and he brought them out with a strong hand, with wonders, signs, and great and grievous measures that he took to defeat Pharaoh and to defeat that place of bondage. That place of bondage. And it was to do what? 24 says, and Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws to fear for our good, to keep us alive. Right? But in order for that to happen, what did the freedom do? He brought us out. Let's go back to that part in 21. 23. Verse 23. It says, and he brought us out from there. What's the there? Israel. What does Mitzrayim or Egypt represent? Bondage, the place of our enslavement. Because what did he start in 21 by saying? Your response to your children when they ask is, we were slaves. So we were in bondage. Were in bondage. And he brought us, back to verse 23, and he brought us out from bondage, from there, from enslavement, to bring us in. He brought us out of bondage to bring us into what? The land which he swore to our fathers, also representing freedom. He brought us out of bondage to bring us in to freedom. Brought us out to bring us in. He brought us out to bring us in. Guess what? Guess what, y'all? Guess what? Can't be in those two places at once. So you are either bond or you are free. Now, here's the thing. So we're going to get into this. Because the next question is, bond to what? Free to what? Bond from what? Bound by what? Freed from what? But to be a bond servant, in one respect, means to be free from something else. Right? So we're going to get into that. But let's look at what obeying these commands have done. Verse 24. He told us to obey these laws. Why?
To keep us alive.
They will help you to fear Yah. They will help you because they're for your good. When? Always. And it will do what? Keep you alive. And it is what verse 25 say?
Righteousness.
This is our righteousness. This Torah.
Hallelujah.
This Torah is our righteousness. And so this Torah is going to teach us how to fear Yah. It's going to teach us to do the things that are for our good. It's going to keep us alive. And it is our righteousness. Now, we've done that. We've looked at, gone back in the Torah. We've gone back in the law, and we've looked at the Exodus, the greatest example of freedom. I might have to explain that, so I'm just saying a great example of freedom. A great example of freedom in Exodus, literally being freed from slavery. And obeying the commands was at the root of that. All right? So, now let's go to Romans. Romans, written by Shaul. Written by a man who is learned in the Torah. Written by a man who knew the Torah, but who had to learn Mashiach. He knew the Torah, but he had to learn Mashiach. And so, let's start with Romans chapter 1, verse 22 through 28. And what we're looking for is a simple idea. Wisdom to man, foolishness to Yah. Wisdom to man, but foolishness to Yah. So let's start reading. Chapter 1, verse 22 says, claiming to be wise, they become fools. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. And changed the esteem of the incorruptible Elohim into the likeness of an image of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed beasts, and of reptiles. These are things that people would create as their gods. And it says, therefore Elohim gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to disrespect their bodies among themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into the falsehood, and worship and serve what was created rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So here you have people who call themselves wise being told that they are in fact fools. And that's because the wisdom of man is foolishness to Elohim. And very often, that which man calls foolish, you ain't got to do all that. It don't matter what day you worship. It don't matter. Here's why I do it. You don't have to do it for that reason. It's not a big deal. All of these things, the things that we do unto the Most High, is minimized and brought low to say, that's not a big deal. In other words, that's foolish. Who cares about that? Oh, you just go to church on Saturday. Oh, okay. What day do you keep your Sabbath? Oh, well, you just don't eat that. Can't you just take it out? And people, I'm telling you, and a lot of times, y'all, people are genuine. I had somebody that asked me that question just last week, as genuine as you could ever hear a question asked. So, you know, they put the little fat back in those beans, but next time if I just take it out, you can eat it then, right? The wisdom of man is foolishness to Yah. Verse 25, 125, Romans chapter 1, verse 25. No, I'm sorry, 26. We already read 25. Verse 26. It says, because of this, Elohim gave them over to degrading passions. For even their women exchanged natural relationships for what is against nature. And likewise the men also, having left natural relations with women, burn in their lust for one another. Just in case you wasn't sure what he was talking about, he says, men with men, committing indecency, and receiving back the reward which was due for their straying. And even as they did not, I'm going to pause there, wait a minute, before I go too far. So you think you're wise. Oh, okay. And now you're worshiping creation versus creator. What's next? You're giving over. Giving over. You know what? Do what you do. Because I told you from the beginning that you needed to guard.
Right.
And when you did not guard, I've given you over. Well, what's next? Now you burn with lust for unnatural relations. And that's not just limited to man and man, woman and woman. That's not the limit. You got animal stuff going on. You got ancestral stuff going on. You got just relationships that are not supposed to be happening. But look at what it is. Even if we stop, because the world goes crazy. Oh, that means that I was born this way and you're against me and or you're against love. Listen to me. Listen to me. It says that in 27, burn in their lust. This is lust. If a man tells me that he is running around to every woman he can possibly find, he is burning with lust. He cannot continue in that way. He is in sin. He cannot justify it by saying to himself, well, I ain't gay. Same token, if a man burns for another man, he cannot say to me, you can't say anything to me because this is natural. No, it's you're burning with lust. The same way I'm going to tell that young man, you got to control yourself. You can't go around running around trying to find every little girl you can find. I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. You cannot. I don't care what you think you feel for this girl and you're a girl. I don't care what you think you feel for this man and you're a man. You cannot allow yourself to fall victim to this sin. It's sin. Period. Unnatural relations. Unnatural relations. And so again, what's wisdom to man? Man says it ain't nothing wrong with it. Love is love. It's just different. Listen, we can't allow ourselves to be taken over and think that our knowledge outweighs his. Why? Because verse 28. And what does verse 28 say? And even as they did not think it worthwhile to possess the knowledge of who? Elohim. In other words, I know what I feel. I know what I'm good. I know what I feel, and I know what I experience, and I'm straight. You the one that's wrong. Well, if I read that the word of Yah and Yah himself says that it is wrong, then you, ma'am or sir, are saying that his knowledge is not worthwhile. It's not worthwhile. It's not important. Now it's different, totally different for you to come and say, man, this is a struggle. This is a battle. I am fighting against it. I need your prayers. I need you to help. I need some help. I need someone to talk to. I need something, some ways to deal with this burning lust. Different. But when you say, it's all good, what comes next? Elohim gave them over to a worthless mind. Why? To do what is improper. So now you go on and do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. Have at it. Because you already determined that the knowledge of Elohim is worthless. It has no value. This is what being free from the law looks like. Let's now really and truly define what is free from the law. And we're going to say with the same writer because people sometimes try to manipulate the English language that's overlaying the Greek, Aramaic, the Hebrew that we are translating the scriptures from. And so in that, let's take a look at this. We're going to stick with Shaul, and we're going to see if we can kind of come up with this idea of freedom. Because the question is obedience bondage? So far, we see that, yeah, I'm in bondage. Matter of fact, here's an example, y'all. Let me pause right there. Here's an example. When your child does something wrong, and let's say they insist and they keep doing that thing wrong, what do us parents typically do? Let's go with what are some things we typically do? What do we do? Take their phones, whoop them. What else did I hear?
Repeating ourselves.
Keep repeating ourselves.
We gonna keep saying it. They might do it after they got punished, but then it's gonna be.
So what did they get?
A punishment.
Oh, punish. Consequent. Oh, okay. So let me ask you this, because I've been told when I was a kid, you can't go nowhere because you did X, Y, and Z. What does that feel like to me? Bondage. Boy, you can't tell me that I ain't under bondage. I can't wait till I get out of this house. Most of this stuff, because I think James and Alvita Byers first, they were listening. So most of that stuff, I never said actually to them. I used to say it after I got in my room or like way away, like I'm on the bus and I know they can't hear me. But to me, what am I telling those parental figures in my head? Y'all are putting me in bondage. But what is the punishment really there to do?
Correct.
Keep us alive. Correct me so that I can get on the path to freedom. Because the bondage that they are inflicting is something like my dad used to always tell me. If I do it, the police won't have to do it out there. I love it.
They don't care nothing about you.
And if the police have to do it, you'll probably end up dead. That's what he used to tell me. So what he represented to me was that law that when I got out of line, I felt like I was in bondage. But really, what was he trying to get me to? Freedom. Now what do I freely do? Now I freely obey. I freely obey the law. I want to obey the law because I don't want to end up where? Bondage. In bondage. So let's look at this. Romans chapter 7, verse 1 through 6. And then we're going to look at Romans chapter 8, verse 1 through 4. Let's start with the first portion there. Romans chapter 7, verse 1 through 6. And it reads, "Or do you not know, brothers, for I speak to those knowing the Torah." So he's speaking to people who know the Torah, right? "That the Torah rules over a man as long as he lives, question mark. For the married woman has been bound by Torah to the living husband. But if the husband, not the wife, if the husband dies, she is released from the Torah or the law concerning her husband." Let's pause right there. That means that she is no longer married to that husband, right? Does that mean she no longer has to obey any laws around marriage? There are some laws that still apply to her. Can she go sleep with another woman's husband? No. Can she go sleep with another woman? No. She's not free from the law. She's free from the law concerning that husband. Can she go become another man's wife? Yes. She is not free as in you can do whatever you like. That's not the freedom that she's given. She is told that the laws that apply to you being a wife, you are no longer bound to. That's what that freedom is. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. We're at verse 3. So then while her husband lives, she shall be called an adulteress if she becomes another man. See? While he lives. But he's deceased, right? But if her husband dies, she is free from that part of the law. So that she is not an adulteress, having become another man's. So, my brothers, you also were put to death to the Torah through the body of Messiah, for you to become another's, the one who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim. For when we were in the flesh, the passions of sins through the Torah were working in our members to bear fruit to death. But now we have been released from the law. We have been released from the Torah, having died to what we were held by, so that we should serve in newness of spirit and not oldness of letter. In other words, y'all, you were cast out. You were put away. You were divorced. Which did what? It released you from all those laws that bound you to be a wife, to be the bride. But when you now make the decision that you desire to be his bride, what does that mean? You are free to become his bride. Now, when you become his bride, what does that mean? Are you free from the law of being a bride, being a wife? Oh, but you were free when he put you away. But you didn't want to be put away. And so in your desire to be with him, now you find yourself reunited. That's why it says, for you to become another's. He'll give you the choice. Do you want it to be him? Or do you want it to be the gods and the lands which you now dwell? The ones that will make you rich and give you all sorts of things. But if not, if you want to be his, then you're being free from the Torah. Means that you're free from the law that kept you away from him. That's what you're free from. You're free from the law that kept you away from him. Which means you're now free to come back to him.
Hallelujah.
We're free to come back to him. Chapter 8, verse 1 through 4. Chapter 8, still in Romans. Romans chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. And it says, there is then now no condemnation to those who are in Messiah Yeshua, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For the Torah of the Spirit of the life in Messiah Yeshua has set me free from the Torah of sin and of death. So I'm free from I have to and must die because of what I have done to be separated. Because the death has been done, the blood has been shed and made available for us to apply. Verse 3 says, for the Torah being powerless in that it was weak, where? Through the flesh. What made the Torah weak is that I had to be the one to carry it out. I had to walk in it. Me, because I could choose not to. Because I could choose to walk away. The weakness, I am the weakness. My involvement. Now, maybe that helps us to understand why Yahweh put Abraham to sleep. He put him to sleep, and he walked through those parts and went into covenant. And his covenant was founded. His covenant was cemented in himself. He made a promise to his friend where he was the guarantor. He was the lender. He was both. So let's continue that verse 3. And it says, Elohim having sent his own son in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin, condemned sin in the flesh, so that the righteousness of the Torah should be completed in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Because now, his leading, his Spirit, his guiding, his blood. So what does it truly mean to be free? What does it truly mean to be free? Let's go to James chapter 1. James chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 16 to 25. What does it mean? What does it mean to be free? Verses 16 through 25. And it reads, do not go astray, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of turning. Having purposed it, he brought us forth by the word of truth, for us to be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So then, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. Verse 21, therefore put away all filthiness, all overflow of evil, and receive with meekness the implanted word. Where is this word? Implanted. Y'all tell me, where was the commands meant to be placed? In our hearts. We say it. It says, these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. And then it says, which is able to save your lives. Y'all remember that, right? This says it's able to save our lives. Didn't we talk about that back in Exodus? Didn't when he gave the command, what was it? It was to fear. Y'all run them down for me. What were those things? What were those things that it said? It said to fear Yah. It says that it was for our good always. It was to keep us alive. And it's our righteousness. So we see here in James 1 and verse 21, it says that this implanted word is able to save our lives. Goes right back to these commands being for our lives. 22 says, and become doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away, and immediately forgets what he was like. But he that looked into the perfect law, the perfect Torah, that of freedom. That of freedom. And does what, y'all? Continues in it. not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of work, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. He shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. Not cursed in his doing. Not put in bondage because of his doing. He is not free from obeying the law. That is not what Romans was discussing when it says we are free from the law. Romans is telling us that we have been released from that which separated us from him. And now, for the grand finale. The grand finale. Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. Now, I think I'm going to start. I'm going to do like a mom. I'm going to carry on the tradition. I think this is going to start being at the end of all teachings. Because whatever I teach about, let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands.
Yes.
But this applies to all mankind. And the only caveat that you might want to put in there, there's only one. If a mankind decides that they want no relationship with their Creator, then you, sir, you, ma'am, have been turned over to your own uncleanness. Go do what you want. Go do what you want. Do what you will, with whom you will. But do not expect to be in relationship with the Most High. Do not expect to receive his blessings. Do not expect to spend eternity with him. Because if you desire that, let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands. But this applies to all men.